Hello, Floodgate family. Thank you for joining us for this edition of MedTech Emerging Minds. And I'm absolutely ecstatic to have Steven Collens, CEO at Matter Health, here with us, who's got a very, very unique perspective on the emerging minds of MedTech. He runs an incubator, but I've gotten to know you a little bit, but I know people listening don't know you, don't know Matter. So give us a little bit about your background and, of course, all the great work you're doing at Matter.
Well, thank you. It's so nice to be here. It's been nice getting to know you and looking forward to the conversation. My personal background, after business school, I spent a decade at Abbott Labs in a variety of roles. I cut my teeth in healthcare and figured out that it's an industry worth both loving and being really frustrated with at times. But love being in healthcare, love doing something with a sort of a deep sense of purpose, and found that a lot of the people through Abbott and through just subsequent years in healthcare all share that kind of desire to really do something that's purpose driven. Then I worked at a venture firm for a while, started Matter 10 years ago. The mission of Matter is to accelerate the pace of change of healthcare. And we set up Matter as a not-for-profit entity because we started with this conviction that collaboration is the best way to innovate in healthcare. And so we wanted to create a platform for collaboration where we could engage everybody from the earliest idea stage startups all the way through to growth stage startups and the largest companies in the world, as well as health systems, universities, investors, scientists, doctors, kind of you name it. Wow. So functionally, we run an incubator for healthcare startups. We've incubated 1,000 companies since we started. They're all over the world. They've collectively now raised about $5 billion, a little more than $5 billion, to kind of fuel their growth. We also run startup accelerators, which are time-bound, cohort-driven, very focused on diabetes or maternal health or things like that. We take 5 or 10 companies for 3 months and put them through a very structured program. And then we partner with the industry, with insurance companies and life sciences companies and health systems to help them build the right collaborations with entrepreneurs and also build their own internal innovation capabilities and internal innovation muscles, which is not sort of the natural necessarily DNA of a lot of these larger companies. And so we're able to help them kind of innovate more effectively also.
I really love how you're bringing all those parts together, to really get them to really collaborate in 2 different styles, right? In that incubator style, and that accelerator style. So I think it's, gives good platforms. Now, I'm curious if there's, you've seen 1,000 companies, more than 1,000 companies, big and small, come through. And for the small ones and the innovators coming in, what would you say some of the biggest challenges, or the couple biggest challenges that are common to most?
Healthcare so entrepreneurship is just a hard thing, period. I mean, that doesn't matter what you're entrepreneuring in. It's not an easy journey, but healthcare is harder. Mm-hmm. And healthcare is harder for some kind of structural reasons with the industry. One of those is that, in the United States, the way that we pay for healthcare doesn't really make any sense. And so you can build something that clearly solves a problem. You can even build something that solves a problem and that people really like to use, and there will be no one to buy it. And that dynamic just doesn't really exist in the same way in other industries.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you build something that solves a problem, somebody likes it, that you're going to be able to create a viable business. But there's at least somebody who will consider paying for it.
Right.
In healthcare, it doesn't work that way.
No.
And that is the single biggest challenge for so many entrepreneurs in healthcare, where they can take technology and do something with it in a way that can improve health, can improve the business of healthcare, can improve. But because of the way the money flows and the economics of it, there just isn't necessarily a buyer.
Yeah.
And that we just see that over and over again, that it's a problem if you're a healthcare entrepreneur. And often, the best ones will not necessarily just start with a technology. They'll actually start with a business model and a
Mm,
business problem. And if you can solve the business problem, then then you can get the thing into the market. But think something that trips up a lot of entrepreneurs is they start with the health problem, which you would think,
right.
well, that's the whole point of it. That's
Right.
why we're doing this. That's why
Right.
we're healthcare entrepreneurs as opposed to a restaurant entrepreneur or whatever. But the problem is it's a
Yeah.
business and you got to figure out the complexities and the nuance of it. And it's a very complicated industry to operate in.
No, I think it's well said, and especially so many entrepreneurs are coming either from that science background or a clinical background where they're solving a very
Yeah.
specific patient-focused need, right? And they're like, well, these
Yeah.
patients are going to get better. It's going to work. But like all things, like all businesses, follow the money. And if you can't get money to tie to the solution, it's going to fail. And unfortunately, I've seen that many, many times myself in the marketplace, right? Where until you can figure out that reimbursement, that economic story that not only makes it clinically impactful, but economically impactful for the marketplace,
Yeah.
the adoption's never going to occur, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I'd say there's a bunch of different archetypes that make up healthcare entrepreneurs, but
yeah,
three of the common ones are scientists, as you said,
yeah,
clinicians, as you said, and then people who have had some experience with the healthcare system, either personally,
mm-hmm.
with a family member, with a friend, and they have witnessed up close that it's broken,
Yeah,
and so they want to fix it. And the challenge with all three of those all those are great, all three, but the challenge with that is that none of those three kind of personas, if you will, is sort of genetically starting with a business problem.
right.
So that's, so doesn't mean they're going to fail. And most of them, it just means that they need to recognize that and figure that part out from the get-go rather than just marching ahead with the
Yeah,
technology problem, the health problem that they're solving.
yeah. No, I mean, I think that makes sense. And you're able to come in, to matter, have discussions with people that might know and go, hey, you know what? This could already fit this existing CPT, or this could be meaningful for a value based care solution, or, to help focus how they develop
Yeah.
the iteration or how they focus their messaging to be able to tie into that business model for that economic outcome. Right.
Yeah. 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 Another thing that going back to some of the challenges and things, people tend to not generalize, but a lot of entrepreneurs, especially when they're the first time entrepreneurs and they're in the early stages of the journey, they will underestimate resistance to change when it comes to workflow systems, implementation, culture, things like that. And they believe in their product, they believe in what they're doing, which obviously they should, and they've got something that works and they can demonstrate, hey, this thing works. And even if it both improves health and there's a business case, there's this other barrier where it's very, the workflows and the cultures and the processes can be fairly sclerotic and in some cases for good reason.
Mm-hmm.
Think about, like, if you're a doctor, you're a health system, like you're trying to make sure you don't hurt people and kill
Right.
people and keep people safe, and so you want to do things that are proven. There's been a huge emphasis over years and years and years on quality and standardizing the best ways of doing things, and so all that kind of mitigates against which is, I think, ultimately is a good thing, but mitigates against sort of somebody being like, yeah, let's try this, let's do this, let's do
Yeah.
this. And so it like trying to just penetrate that and understand workflows and where there's opportunities is another one of these kind of healthcare complexities that
Right. Yeah.
that's a real barrier.
It's it is a paradoxical market because it's dynamic and innovative, but highly conservative.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, exactly.
it's probably one of the last business markets in the world that might still use a fax machine. I don't know if they still do, but I know 6 years ago I was still getting 30% of our orders in a major business via fax, and I was probably the only place in the world, So
yeah, that's still around.
Yeah. So I think that's a couple of really good insights for people that are merging. So I heard you say is that people are coming in with that new idea, is understanding that one, they've got another business model, right? You got to have the need solve solution, which is consistent in any entrepreneur, but you've got to be able to meet the unique business model that is U.S. healthcare. And then number two is realize that although this is a dynamic market, it's a conservative market. That change process, like you said, it's got a reason that it is, because it's not like, hey, let's test this new burger and see if people like it or not, right? And if they don't buy it. This is someone's life, right? This is impact and the liability that is. So understanding both of those aspects are crucial when you're coming in. I'm curious, besides the converse of having that business model, thinking that change is going to be high, is there any other commonalities that you see of the successful businesses that have emerged from Matter or you've dealt with over time? Is there any commonalities that you might be able to point out to us?
So I'll caveat this up front, that if I could look at an entrepreneur right away and be like, oh, that's the archetype that's going to just crush it, then I'd be like the most successful venture capitalist in the world, because it's very hard.
You're not omnipotent. I get this. Okay. Yes.
Yeah. That said, I think there is little substitute for deep domain expertise because of these things, because of what we were just talking about. So entrepreneurs that really understand how healthcare works, at least how the part of healthcare is that they're innovating in, is certainly a helpful thing to have. Now, it doesn't mean, you come in, you can surround yourself with other people. There's always advisors. We spend a ton of time kind of advising and mentoring and supporting entrepreneurs, and, about how do you go to market in healthcare? How do you sell into healthcare? How do you build something that will fit into workflow? How do you get something paid for? But entrepreneurs that come with that deep industry knowledge, that deep domain expertise, there's often just no substitute for that. And then, the entrepreneurs who have been successful, especially on the software side, but even, really early stage on the MedTech side, but, like on the software side especially, the ability to very rapidly adjust based in response to feedback from the market is critical.
Yeah.
So, if you're, and this is true services, software, things that aren't, where you don't end up in a constricted regulatory pathway and, lock down the design and then go forward. But in places where you can keep iterating around the design, figuring out how to quickly build something to get it into the hands of a customer, see what happens, see what they like, see what they don't like, make a change, go back, iterate until you sort of arrive at product market fit. And then, entrepreneurs who can do that really well and also do it efficiently, not taking years and years to do it, can be really successful. And then they can get to a point where it's like, all right, we know what it takes to service, the implementation, the customer service, the sales, and we can just basically pour fuel on it and with capital and grow and scale.
Yeah, that makes really good sense. I like the idea that understanding the domain expertise is crucial, because even if you're an entrepreneur, that understanding that if you don't have that level of domain expertise, go to places like Matter and be open and humble to learning as much as you can to try to get, to achieve that or augment what you don't have, if that's a crucial aspect, right?
Yeah. You gotta be willing to you gotta be self-aware enough, be like, I don't know ABC as well as I need to, And so I got to go find that
Yes.
knowledge. Could be a place like Matter, or it could be, set up an advisory board. There's different ways to do it. Hire somebody, put it, different formulas make sense for different entrepreneurs. But you got to your point, you got to have that, not too much hubris to know what you don't know, recognize what you don't know.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And then kind of along that same lines, that same level of humility. It's one of the hardest things for entrepreneurs, especially they spent years designing this idea in this thing in their mind, is going out and letting the market tell them some of their baby's ugly, you know, and listening and being welcoming of that adjustment and being able to really hear it is hard,
Yeah.
And your point, hear it and make those quick adjustments. And if done correct, I think what you're saying too is done well, they can iterate quickly, especially before they get to design lock on. That's crucial because that's even harder. They got to go backwards in regulatory to find out later. But through that process, they're creating champions for the market.
Yeah.
So when they get to market, now those people that had their ideas actually implemented, they're going to be the ones that are going to stand up on the podium and talk about it, or be the first adopters and bring it through that value analysis committee. Whatever that market access issue is, they can now be a champion to help pull that through. This is what I kind of hear you saved up. Right. So
yeah. I mean, it's better for an entrepreneur to fall in love with a problem that needs to be solved, like a business problem that needs to be solved, rather than the product that they have.
Yeah.
Because if you fall in love with the product too early, what you just said can happen, and you sort of lose. It's hard. Like you got to listen to the market and understand that. To your point, baby might be ugly.
It might be. So there's a lot of great ideas. There's a lot of people that have those issues figured out, right? They're getting that product market fit right. They have the business model. They have the problem solved. But there's still a lot of companies, and there's a limited amount of financing.
Yeah.
How do they get noticed? How do they stand out? What's the best? I mean, again, if you give me the answer here, everyone will probably you don't need to even be on podcasts anymore. But but what would you recommend is some of the best practices? How's that?
Yeah, and it's gotten harder. I mean, the last 3 years, the venture market has really, I mean, it almost basically collapsed, and then it's been hard. And we've seen investors, sort of raise the bar on what they're looking for, and they're looking for solutions that have a demonstrable ROI, and where they have a proof of concept, and it's gotten harder and harder for the kind of really early stage entrepreneurs to get that early capital to get there. And so the ones who can be just super scrappy and figure out how to get that proof of concept, how to get, demonstrate an ROI with as little capital as possible, have a higher chance of ultimately attracting the investors. But it's hard. I mean, talk to the companies we worked with who go ultimately raise money. Not uncommon at all for them to have talked to more than 100 investors, and it's a slog, and you gotta go out there. And it's another thing, you gotta listen. Like they're not, all the investors aren't going to say the same things, but there's going to be patterns, that and what they say. And so the pit, you got to keep adjusting and iterating. And it's like, all right, what did I hear from that investor? What am I missing? I maybe need to step back. I'd say the other thing that a lot of entrepreneurs do is they go to market maybe before they're ready, and so you only get so many opportunities. Well, you only get one opportunity to make a first impression, but like you get in front of an investor, and you're not, and you just don't have your act together, not because you're not brilliant and you're not solving the right problem and you're not kind of well on your way, but if you don't have the story together, if you don't have the pieces together, and they'll look at it in 2 minutes and then try to get another meeting, it's very hard. And so if you go out, and entrepreneurs who go out too early, they risk their sort of seeming stale, like so that like you want to be, you you got to like time the like your trajectory right with when you hit the market, because you don't want to be in market raising money for like 18 months, because you just sort of become a company still raising money or whatever. You got to like really figure out how to focus it. And so those 100 meetings, again, they can't take like 2 years to do it. You got to kind of you got to have a strategy, and then go execute it at the right time.
No, I think it's some really good advice. I mean, it's hard, realize it takes a lot of meetings. But you only got one bite at the apple, so make sure you're ready to actually go to the market. Don't go too early, which is hard because you need the money. So and then
Yeah.
and listen to what those meetings say, just like you had to listen to those customers. What are they asking?
Yeah,
Those
exactly.
common questions,
Yeah, they're
get better every
think
time.
of them as customers. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's some really good nuggets. You mentioned earlier that the market was getting, you said collapsed, right? Like that. So, where are you seeing the market now, and what's the prediction on the capital markets, for the medtech and biotech space right now? Again, I'm asking you hard questions, and
Yeah. I
again,
mean,
if you actually get this right, you're Nostradamus. But I'd love your opinion.
Yeah. I mean, it's been rough. I mean, everybody was saying late last year, like, 2025, everything, it's going to kind of kick into higher gear. Um, the sort of been driven by a number of things, but there's been a kind of a dearth of exits for the last few years, and so that makes it harder for the
Yeah,
investors to go raise more capital, raise more funds, if they're, because all the capital
they're
they're
locked up in those existing funds because they're not
locked
being.
up in their existing funds. Yeah, and so until there's more exits, whether it's IPOs, whether it's, I mean, most of it's going to be M&A, but IPOs, M&A, that it's still going to be really, really hard. And then, there's been so much the kind of chaos injected into the economy in the last, since January,
Yeah,
that, uh, that, and it's a lot of stuff that it's hard to figure out how to price it in, and
yeah,
how to value it, and how to know, like, it's like you look at the FDA, and there's, you got this guy there, and it's like, all right, well, as long as he's there, he knows, he knows what he's doing. We know what to expect. We know what his, process is, and then he's gone. So you got somebody else in, and then, that kind of thing keeps happening. And that makes, then some investors look at it and they're like, well, what are the criteria the FDA are going to use to prove this thing? It's harder
mm-hmm.
to know. Then you look at, a lot of the services and software. Okay, if you're selling into a health system, and if Medicaid gets, really cut deeply, what does that do to hospital finances? If some of these other changes, like, what does it do to hospital finances? What is that going to do? How does that change where the opportunities are for entrepreneurs, where to focus? And so there's just like all these questions about
Mm.
that are just out there, because
Yeah, yeah, and
it just kind of there's a lot of chaos, and that is hard. That makes it harder for anybody to raise money and make the
yeah.
decisions about it.
No, I mean, I totally agree. And you saw last fall, several exits start to come. I mean, Edwards was on a run, right? You saw Stryker made some big ones.
Yeah.
That, where we're starting to release some of that capital, but I would say post January it slowed back down again. I'm starting to see, I called it the wet blanket effect of that market uncertainty. And I'm starting to see the blanket start to dry. That's my shade in the market. I'm starting to see some more comfort maybe around that uncertainty, and it's not, the flames aren't yet coming through.
Yeah.
But I'm seeing the blanket. That's my read.
Yeah.
Closer to
There
the
were a couple
market.
IPOs recently.
Yeah,
There's,
correct.
it's like you got to take, I mean, it's like week to week. You got to
Yeah,
sort of, so yeah.
yeah. So we keep on going. That's the beauty is. Now we talked a lot about the entrepreneur, but you also mentioned you service in support a lot of some of the largest companies in the market, right?
We do.
So and I'm curious, where do you see that those companies have the greatest need to regain that innovation engine?
Yeah. So the things that make large companies effective and thrive as large companies are sort of in some ways almost inherently make them less likely to be cutting edge innovators, because they have a focus around a sort of a discipline and a process that gets them the ability to uh, scale products globally, to sell to and to manage all of that kind of infrastructure, supply chain, finance, sale, all of that stuff. And they have brands to protect and reputations that are out there that are built over years and years and years of stability and quality, and so so that it's harder for big companies to harness emerging technologies as rapidly as entrepreneurs can, who don't have a brand or a reputation. They don't have the sort of legacy baggage. They don't know all the systems. They don't, they can just go fast
Right.
and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But there's sort of less. So what we've seen, really since we started Matter, but it just continues to accelerate, is large companies want to get better at two things. So one is figure out how do we best capitalize on the value that entrepreneurs are creating and have the potential to create outside our walls. And that requires being able to find the right entrepreneurs, figure out which are the right ones to collaborate with at the right time, build the right collaborations that can create value. And most of the time, what those operations are geared for are like kind of later stage companies that have a very clear, it's proven, they go buy it for whatever. But those earlier stage ones, they want to, there's a lot of innovation going on there, and it's as they're looking at everything that's so competitive, it's like, how do I get an edge? How do I figure out who to work with, how to work with them, what kind of collaborations, how to structure it, how to do it efficiently, and so we see that a lot. And then the other thing that we see a lot is you see executives saying like, look, we just got to figure out how to be more nimble and how to be more innovative. We can't, the natural like course of a large organization is to become more entrenched in its ways. That just sort of like how large organizations progress and evolve, and it's sort of their natural thing. We see a lot of executives saying, we got to shake this up. It doesn't mean we have to turn our company of 40,000 people into like an entrepreneurial, like we're just going to go so fast and break things, whatever. It's like, no, but we need to figure out a way to protect innovation that's happening inside, let it breathe, give it a voice, make sure it's connected to the priorities of the company, and harness the incredible talent that exists in the companies and that incredible potential. And so we help companies in both of those both those areas.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. How to engage with those innovative companies. The ones that are already having product market fit and accelerating. They know how to acquire those, but it's higher multiple. How do they engage earlier downstream and create those support, relationships that what's the right structures, right? That have worked, and you've seen them countless. Like here's textbooks. We've seen that. And then secondly, how do you unlock the agency within those great minds and great ideas that are already within the organization, whether creating skunk works or however they do it, to free them up to be able to have that, development idea internally, and create those best practices. And I can imagine, I mean, I've been at large companies. I understand, it's difficult, right? Those are very hard questions to answer. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And, Skunkworks got a bad rap whenever it did, but, partly because one of the challenges then is you got to protect the innovation, the people who are doing it, let it breathe, give it the right resources, but it can't be like so far over there that it's not connected into the strategy and the focus areas of the company. And so that's a hard balance for every company to figure out.
Yeah.
You can't be, it can't be part of the day to day, because then it's not innovation, but it can't be like, hey, we're just going to like stick 6 people in a building over there and just, give them some money and go for it.
Yeah. And they got to have a plan to utilize the innovation that they created,
Yeah.
I think one of the great entrepreneurial big company development misses of all times was, I love Steve Jobs when he visited Xerox's innovation labs, and I think that was the inspiration for most of the innovations of early Apple's early innovation. He just took from what he saw there that they never used, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So that's great. Good. Well, hey, I really enjoyed the conversation, Steven. Thanks so much for taking this, for enlightening us on innovation, entrepreneurship in this crazy market of MedTech, med device, and biotech. I really appreciate you doing this. If someone wants to learn more about Matter, get connected with you or your accelerators, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, so our website is matter.health. Our name is Matter because we work, when we were trying to understand the ethos of the community of healthcare innovators, it's people who want to do something that matters. And so we ended up with Matter, which we love. On the downside is there's a lot of things named Matter, and there's a lot of things named Matter in the healthcare industry. So matter.health is our incubator, and people should go check it out if they're interested. Can reach out to me at, my email is steven@matter.health, and always happy to hear from folks.
Awesome. Hey, thanks so much, Steven. Thanks so much for doing all that matters. Let me see what I did there in healthcare, and I appreciate what you do.
You did it. Well, thank you. I really appreciate having the opportunity to talk to you and talk to your audience, and best of luck to you and everything, all the great work that you're doing.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Steven.